Okay, so just to recap and move forward at the same time, the 10 levels or areas of control are once again education, advertising and propaganda, predictive programming, sports, politics, and religion, food, water, and air. Then point number 6 or area number 6 is drugs. We've already talked about that. Then military testing. Now, food, water, air, drugs, and military testing is pretty well synonymous, yet interdependent. Fluoridation in water supply, I would consider to be a drug because what it does is it calcifies the pineal gland, which is, for the lack of a better term, one of your spiritual antennas. So if that is calcified, you are less likely to perceive things in a spiritual fashion. That's not a new age statement. It's just a statement of how our bodies are designed.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that recently, actually.
That's right. Now, this is a very important point because human beings have the ability to see within a certain spectrum and hear within a certain spectrum. But that doesn't mean that what we see and hear is all that's there. And a case in point is Balaam's donkey. Balaam's donkey saw something that Balaam didn't. So we all know the story. And the point is, when you hear your dog barking or your cat's, hair standing up on end, that doesn't mean there's some kind of poltergeist in the room necessarily, but it could be. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, is my pet cat or dog alerting me to the presence of something that has been affecting my family for the past couple months or years? And if the answer to that question is yes, then you may, I repeat, may have have another indicator of something that's affecting you that you may not be aware of.
Right. No, I've thought about that before. I mean, with animals and the other realm.
Oh yeah.
Having a different sense, using different brain functions, etc. So
drugs can include fluoridation of the water supply, which affects the pineal gland, which is considered to be one of the spiritual antennas that God has put into our bodies.
Here at the campground, I have to put a certain amount of bleach in our water, or chlorine in the water system, because it's a commercial setting. So the health department comes by and inspects once a year and says, okay, well, you have 0.5 or 2.0, whatever it is. I try to keep it as low as I can, which is at a 0.5. But I was kind of just asking the guy questions this year, and I'm like, when did that start? He's like, that's a good question. I don't know when that started, when they made us put in commercial settings, bleach in the system. But I did ask him about fluoride. How do I get fluoride tested? Like, can I get a kit? He's like, oh no, you'd have to bring it in to get it tested through us, Like, I thought that was pretty crazy.
Well, that's very interesting to me because then they have complete control.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell you whatever they want to tell you, and they can't do a test in front of you.
Yep. You can't do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I'm, not intellectually up on, being able to take a water sample and against a reference sample and add chemicals and compare the difference. It's just.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I'm sure you can even test your own silver.
Oh, no.
You need a degree for that, guys. Come on.
Totally.
And the other thing that I noticed when I was replacing light bulbs this summer in cabins and such. This is really interesting. I just thought I'd read this to you. You've probably seen this already, but as I was reading at Lowe's, I just picked up some light bulbs, and I was reading the back. I'm like, this is crazy. It says this product complies with Part 18 of the FCC rules, but may cause interference to radios, televisions, wireless telephones, and remote controls. If interference occurs, move the product away from these devices or plug it into a different outlet. Do not install this product near maritime safety, communications equipment, or other critical navigation or communication equipment operating between 0.45 and 30 megahertz.
And do you know why that is? Because it's a digital device. It's not analog.
Well, that's funny because one of our friend Matt, he actually he was working here during the summer. He's becoming a pastor. He's going through school for that right now. But he was saying his friend, he does ham radio stuff. He's like a member of like whatever that club is to be in a ham radio club or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was making the comment that Obama recently signed some sort of bill where he can now control ham radios, which is like kind of like one of the last frontiers. And he was like, I don't know how he's going to do that. And it kind of dawned on him, this light bulb, pun intended here, that wow, that could be a way that they could control ham radios is through this.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm against smart meters is because they can be externally controlled. Mm-hmm. Your thermostat can be externally controlled if it's a smart meter.
And can't, in light of Boston, when you talk about a pressure cooker, could not a water heater become a bomb?
Anything has become a bomb now. I mean, even as parents in some school districts, you're not allowed to pack your own kid's lunch. It's that bad. I mean, because that Twinkie bar could be a bomb. Oh, that can open up a whole can of worms, but we got to keep going here because there's so much stuff to cover. Okay, point number 6 about drugs as a tool of control is already covered. Then point number 7, military testing is also a tool of control. Now, if we don't get to it, I want to get to it right now. In the first Gulf War, let's see. One of the first things you do if you are engaged in warfare with an enemy is you cut or eliminate the enemy's ability to communicate. That's one of the first things, if not the first thing you do, because then you've got this huge device known as a military that can't talk to itself. So it's pretty well useless. So the question I have for you and for the thousands of people who will listen to this is this. Given the fact that in Gulf War I in 1991, all of the Iraqi forces' communications had been eliminated, just how is it that thousands of troops in hundreds of locations simultaneously surrendered? The answer to that question is because they received a subconscious signal to do so. The whole area of science that I'm talking about is psychotronic warfare. You can cause feelings of dread or feelings of euphoria to occur to control people's behavior on a subconscious level to get them to do things that they would normally not consider, like surrendering to an enemy simultaneously. This just opens up a whole can of worms for people that just can't handle it. But the fact is that it is there.
Wow. I used to read a lot of books on manipulation in high school, Leonard. I really got into that, and in that when you're if you're going to manipulate someone, you're usually using their environment, external sources. But if you could artificially generate that, the amount of control you could exert would be, wow. That's just mind-blowing to me.
That's right. And we are going to get to that 10-page white paper that I emailed to you, because that pretty well is the capstone, if you will, to this entire discussion. If you understand what this person is saying, and if you understand who this person is, and we'll get to that person tonight, then it'll explain everything. Okay. Point number 8 in the spectrum of control is electromagnetic spectrum. We just talked about that. Then point number 9 is television, computer, and flicker rates on screens.
I've always wondered about that flicker rate.
That's right. It turns out that, by the way, this is a kind of a teacher's secret weapon in order to pass a test. You really have 2 brains. Everyone listening to me has 2 brains, the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. The conscious brain filters out vital information from quote-unquote useless information depending on what you consider to be vital or useless. And that is a paradigm that can shift. And you can shift it if you know how to do that. But the subconscious brain remembers everything. Every memory that you've ever had is stored in your head. You're just not aware of it, because if you were aware of it, your mind would be a literal trash heap of useless information. But occasionally, through trauma, you can recall everything. And a perfect example of this is September 11th, 2001. If I bring that date up, I can ask you where you were, who you were with, what time you heard the information, how you reacted to the information, how you found out about that information, what the weather was like, and I could go down that list. And then I ask the average individual, why is it that you can't recall that information to any other scene in your life? And the reason is because of what I just said. Then your mind will be a trash heap of information. You can, and this is going to sound new age, but it's not. It's like any physical thing. It's like training to lift weights or training to be a ballerina. It all involves techniques. You can train your mind to remember what it forgot. It's possible.
Yes.
And these techniques are well known to those in the know. And these techniques are being used on a psychotronic or electronic level because it is the perfect way of implanting information into you subconsciously. And the final level of control isn't quite out yet, but it will be sometime next decade. And that technology is more revolutionary than the computer revolution that we've been through over the past 30 years. And that revolution is called nanotechnology.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're familiar.
I know you're familiar with it, but just as an aside, or just to highlight it, because we can't get into it tonight, machines that self-replicate and can be carried by a host unaware, as in your body, the host, can carry them unaware and can modify you biologically and can modify your behavior by turning on synapses in the brain like a computer chip, on and off, on and off.